Since the beginning of time, man has been called to work. Uh, Adam was put in the Garden of Eden to work and take care of it. Genesis 2 chapter 15 or Genesis chapter 2 verse 15, Bible says the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. Shortly thereafter was when Adam was tossed out of the garden. Adam and Eve both were tossed out of the Garden of Eden, and you all know the story where God tells them that from now on they're going to have to sweat and work, and they're going to have to till the ground and work hard to produce and provide for themselves. Being 2016, we've come a long ways from that, but a lot of these original aspects of work remain today. Uh, the Bible discusses, and these are things from thousands of years ago that still pertain to what we do day in and day out in our daily walk. We're going to spend some time reading some scriptures and kind of discussing the way that we are expected to be at work and see what the Bible has to say about it. I want to start this off. We want to start off with asking you if you love what you do. And that's kind of a broad topic. It's one that we won't get too deep into today, but I want to share something with you. A few years ago, I got into a situation where I was absolutely miserable with my job. Uh, and it turned out that that was God's way of calling me into doing something different. I ended up doing the same type of work, but just in a different spectrum. And I started my own business, which turned out where God had a plan for me that I didn't realize at the time. At the time, we kind of made a very long, thought out, prayerful decision of should we do this or should we do that, and we ended up kind of taking a step out on faith. But what we didn't realize is the plan that God had to open up for us as in opening this business. And I want to read you this verse that kind of goes along with that. This is Proverbs 16, verse 3. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. What he's saying in here has nothing to do with your plans, as in your own personal plans. Because I can tell you right now that your own personal plans are not going to have as much effect on your life as God's plans for your life. And what he's talking about here are your plans. He's talking about God's plans for you. When I first started in this kind of business venture, we took a step out and started. A lot of you know I own a local tree and landscape company. I've been doing this in this industry and doing this for quite a while. I was not quite where I would tell you that I was probably a master. I was a master level climber and a master level, landscaper, and I was pretty good at managing a job site, but I had never really delved into the business side of this. So when we took on opening this business, it wasn't really something that we were prepared for, and God led the way. I'll just tell you that our first couple of years, as with just about any business when you start, it was financially excruciating. It was extremely stressful, extremely difficult, and there were times when I just wanted to give up and walk away. Uh, I'll tell you now that I have gotten further and further into this. The longer this goes on, the more I love what I do, the more I really enjoy what I do, and the more I realize in God's plans for my life that there were absolutely nothing that I thought that they were going to be. The more I do this, the more I realize that God had me in a position where I meet a lot of people day in and day out. I'm in a very public, profile owning the business, and I also have a lot of employees underneath me, and we get a lot of guys that come in, just being the type of industry that it is. We get a lot of people that come in and out that need that. They need that mentorship. They need that seed planted. And there's a lot of these guys that come in, day out that might not be able to get a job otherwise, and they need that in their life, and they need that help and that kind of boost for them, which is why I feel like God put me in this place. And again, at the time that the business was started, I had no idea that that was even going to happen. So I would just go ahead and tell you, if you don't absolutely love what you do, it's highly possible that you could, it could be God's way. I won't say if you don't absolutely love it. There's going to be aspects of work that you're not going to enjoy. There's aspects of my job now that I don't enjoy. Nobody likes raking leaves out of a yard. I do it every day. But if you are plumb miserable in what you're doing, Sometimes you might want to get down and spend some time talking to God and asking Him, is this what you really have for me? Because God, there's nothing wrong with telling God, hey, I'm miserable. Show me if I'm in the wrong spot and do I need to move? That's perfectly okay for God, you to pray and tell God, I'm miserable, and God to give you a revelation of, hey, you need to move and do something else. And I'll tell you this, don't be afraid to take that crazy first step. If you got, a lot of times God will turn a hobby into a full time, well paid position. I would urge you to spend time in prayer and spend time with God. That we talk about a lot about that daily conversation with God. If you have that daily conversation with God, it's a lot easier to speak and listen to Him and understand what He has in store for your life. If you don't have that daily conversation, it's very difficult to discuss things. And I talk about discussing things because you will discuss things if you have that daily conversation with God, because you'll be able to listen to Him. You'll start seeing it affect your life and seeing it affect your day to day, and it'll be a lot easier for you to realize this is what God has planned for me. I want to ask you today, do you represent Christ at work? This is a huge deal for a lot of us, because I know there's a lot of us that don't. A lot of us that have, and I'm not talking about are you being a bad person, or you, telling dirty jokes and swearing and being one of those people, or you not being a good Christian. That's a whole different type of faith than what I'm discussing here. What I'm talking about here is, are you being a good steward of the job that God gave you? Colossians 3:23 and 24 reads, "Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ." I'll tell you this, if God is the one that says He's going to provide for you and you don't have $100 bills appearing on your doorstep, that means that God has provided a means for you to provide for your family, i.e., your job. So if God has provided you this job, are you spending your time every day in due diligence, working heartily, working steadfastly? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing at work? And are you being a good steward, not just of your job and the resources God is providing for you, but are you being a good steward of the resources provided by your employer? Because respecting an employer and realizing that you were working for God and you were performing a job that was provided for you by God, that, being lazy, being late, being a bad steward and not caring about your job or your employer, and spending more time upset and ill about your work than you spend actually doing your job, then you are basically, you're going against God, because you're not doing what He's called you to do. Uh, and the Bible says there's rewards for hard work. If you commit your work to God, that there's rewards for that, and that's the same as in Proverbs where I just read, Proverbs 16:3, commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. There are rewards for hard work. If you spend time, and that sounds crazy for us. Oh, so you mean if I go and there, if I go to work every day and do what I'm supposed to, there's rewards for it? Well, the Bible calls you to do that. You're supposed to respect your boss and respect him just as if you were working for God Himself. So you're supposed to be doing exactly what you're called to do, day in, day out, all the time. That means on time, there every day. Hey, what can I do? Working hard to be the best you can be and providing the best service you are capable of providing for your employer, so that not only do you set a good precedence, but you also set a good example for those around you. We always talk about people, being like the water cooler gossip. That's one of those kind of things that you should separate yourself from as an employee, and as a Christian employee. You want to separate yourself from these types of things. A lot of us tend to get involved in the work politics and, the gossip around work. And it's men and women both. Believe me, I know some men that are bigger gossips than any woman you've ever met in your life. The politics of work and this discussion, this and that, is that taking place? Is that getting in the way? Is it becoming an idol for you over doing your job the way that you're supposed to be and the way that you're called to do it? Because if you're not giving an employee your best, then you're not giving God your best for the work that He's provided for you. I want to ask you, are you providing for your family? The Bible specifically tells you that you're supposed to provide for your family and those around you. And that if you're not, that it's just as bad as being an unbeliever. 1 Timothy uh, chapter 5, verse 8, the Bible reads, "But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." We talked about being lukewarm. In fact, we talked about it several times. If you are lukewarm and you're not 100% on fire for God, this is included at work. The Bible says that that's worse than being, it's better for you to be an unbeliever, a literal atheist, than for you to not be 100% committed to God. Work is a big part of that. A lot of us tend to not think about that. We just kind of go through the motions at work. If we are not 100% committed to our jobs, just like we'd be 100% committed to God. And that means we're not following the plan that God has for us. And you can miss out on blessings. You can also miss out blessing others through the example that you set at work. That's a huge, huge, huge thing for us. And that's something we're going to get into here in just a second. But if you are just a regular standard employee, if you're the one that's the standout guy that's doing everything that's called for you, God's going to bless you for it. He may not bless you with it monetarily now, but the Bible specifically says that you will be rewarded for it in heaven. So there's a reward for this at the end, that God's going to reward you spiritually, not to mention the fact that you're going to be the one that knows, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I've done everything I'm called to do, and I'm being a good steward of the job that God provided for me, which means I'm being a good steward of my finances and I'm providing for my family. If you are unemployed and you are not currently providing for your family, if you are not physically out there seeking a job, right now you need to be looking for that employment. Honestly, I'll tell you, it doesn't really matter what it is at this point. If you're struggling and you're not providing for your family, are you spending more time at home on the Xbox than you are, or more time on Facebook of all places? Are you spending more time doing these things than you are out seeking gainful employment and taking care of your family? The Bible says that if you are not doing that, it's worse than being an unbeliever, because at that point you're being lukewarm because you're not out seeking what God has planned for your life. We talk about being an example for employees, and this is going to be kind of more geared towards either owner operator type employees or management level employees with employees underneath you. Uh, Titus chapter 2 verse 7 and 8 reads, "In everything set them an example by doing what is good. In your teaching show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about us." In a nutshell, that means to be above reproach. That's as simple as it can be. You are supposed to, especially as a business owner, are you above reproach? Are you a man of integrity? Do you do what you say you will do for your customers, for your employees? One of the main things that causes employees to fail as employees is to kind of get in that zone of, well, boss man does this or boss lady does this, and it's okay because they do it, so I can do it too. Well, I would ask you, what kind of example are you setting for your, not just for your employees, but for your clients and customers as well? If you are not one to follow through and do, if you tell a customer, I'll be here at a certain time, or I'll do this for this price, if you're lying to customers, if you're doing things that are dishonest, if you are, something as simple as not honoring a schedule with someone, that's one of the most frustrating things ever. You're supposed to, as a Christian and as a good steward of your job, you are supposed to be a man or woman of integrity. It says, it talks about in your teaching, show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned. That doesn't just mean being, you know, it doesn't just mean being honest. It also means that, the things that you do day in and day out is what I would consider your teaching. Yeah, employees learn by example, and that's not just the literal physical showing someone how to do their job for a younger employee, but it would also be teaching them by the way that you do your job. Are you steadfast? Are you working diligently all day, every day, and Are you meeting the demands that you're supposed to meet? If you're a management level employee, are you setting a good example for the employees under you by being a good employee, or are you the ringleader of that slothfulness and that laziness and the dishonesty that goes on? A lot of us tend, again, we get caught up in the politics of work, and you don't realize that you affect those underneath you. If you have a negative attitude towards your upper management and towards those appointed over you, then you are setting that precedence for those underneath you, and they will eventually treat you the same way and with the same disrespect. Um, if you were an owner, especially a small business owner, I like these local business guys because I am one myself. As an owner, you have one of the most incredible abilities to affect those around you, clients, customers, and employees alike, because you are the highest level at that position or at that job. uh, do you realize that you are not the highest level? Throughout my job and throughout taking this walk of faith that we did, kind of walking out on a limb, so to speak, no pun intended for me, but if you were if you're setting a good example and you are taking that leap of faith, you have just one of the most incredible opportunities to affect everyone around you so that you can be the one that is the leader. Are you praying with your employees if you can? Are you setting that good example? Are you telling people, you might not be able to pray with an employee, but you can certainly tell them that you go to church. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think it's illegal anywhere telling someone that you went to church this weekend while everyone else is talking about their party and, you know, what girls they met or what guys they met and what they did wrong this weekend. There's nothing wrong with being above reproach and being that good person. You don't have to be party to that. There's no there's nothing good that comes of you being a party to these kind of things. If you can separate yourself and differentiate yourself from them, people will notice. Clients will notice too, customers especially. They will notice that you are different from the rest of the crowd, and God will bless you for that. And I will tell you that the more committed you get to this, the deeper your walk with Christ will grow, and along those lines, the more successful often you will be, because God's going to bless you and He's going to entrust you with more. The more the better that you do, the more He's going to entrust you with, and the more success you will have, the further you can go, and the bigger things will get, because as you grow, God's going to give you more territory to grow more. We've read the parable of the shrewd manager, or the parables of the talents, where those who are entrusted and do well with little will be given much. So if you have a position and you do everything you're supposed to do, and you commit your work to God and you put God first and let Him be the ultimate boss of everything that you do, you're going to grow in ways that you won't even be able to fathom the way that you will grow. And again, a lot of times it talks about your plans being established. Those are God's plans for your life, and God's plans will be established in your life, and you will grow through Him and often get into some kind of mysterious way that you never even thought was going to happen. uh, I encourage you to spend some time and get into these verses. Again, these are all going to affect everyone differently. Everybody's in a different walk, and everybody's in a different place in their life. So I would encourage you to spend some time reading through the verses that we discussed tonight. Get back in the Word and read them for yourself and see how they affect you and how they affect your position. Like, everybody's going to be in some kind of different place, but this is going to be, even for the summer job student, all the way to the 30-plus year career. Where are you in your walk with God, and is your walk with God transferring through into your work life? Again, if it's not, maybe you're lukewarm, and maybe you're not exactly where you need to be. Take that time, spend time in the Word, and pray about it with God, and get these things right so that you can be a good steward and a good employee and a good owner or manager.